Hello guys, you're welcome to my YouTube channel, and in today's tutorial we're going to be modeling a simple scooter bike from scratch to finish, and I'll be very fast about it. But first, before we model our scooter bike, I will show us how to navigate one Blender interface. So what I'm using now is Blender 3.3.1. We'll have this chart here, so we can click outside this. So now we are in our Blender interface. So the first thing you see in Blender is this cube, and to move your 3D windows, first of all, you hold Shift and your middle scroll button. Now you have the chance to move your 3D windows, and to rotate your 3D windows is very simple. You just hold your center mouse button, your middle mouse button, and rotate your hand sideways. Now you can rotate your 3D screen. You can hold Control and your middle scroll button to move inwards and outwards in your 3D windows. We have our manipulation tools here. We have our select tool, our cursor. We have our move tool. If I select this move tool, I can move this cube in the y-axis. This green line on our grid denotes the y-axis. The red line on our grid denotes the x-axis, and this blue line denotes the z-axis. So you have x, y, z in 3D. I can also rotate an object. So this is the rotate tool. I can also rotate on the y-axis, on the z-axis, and on the x-axis. So Control Z to undo those commands. This for scale also. I can also scale on the x-axis. I can also scale on the y-axis. I can also scale uniformly also. And the shortcut key for move is grab, G on your keyboard for grab, S on your keyboard to scale uniformly, arrow on your keyboard to rotate. So that is that for our manipulation tool. And now we can go straight to modeling our scooter bike. But first thing I will do, I will select this cube and click delete on my keyboard to delete that cube out. And now how to bring in reference images into our Blender is very simple. But first we will do the command Control Alt Q on our keyboard so that we can have the four projection windows, which is the top orthographic view here, our user perspective here, our front view here, and our right view here. So now I will hover my mouse to my front view, and I will say Shift A to add an object, but this time I'm not adding an object, I'm adding an image reference. So now I will do Shift A. So the add menu comes up, and I will go to image. I will click on image and go to reference. So now this now takes me to my desktop, so where I've saved my reference. So I'll come to my desktop where I saved my reference, and I will check my project file, click on project file, and though I didn't rename the scooter here, so I can go back to my where I saved it now, and let me say scooter. Say okay. So now when I go back to my Blender, I can close this now and say Shift A, image reference. I'll come to my desktop, I'll go to my project file, and now I have my scooter here. I can click on that and say load reference in my front orthographic view. So I will do the same process for my right orthographic view also. I will say Shift A again, I'll go to image, I'll go to reference, and I'll click on scooter, and I will say load reference. So now this is our front view, which is this, and this is our right view, which is this. So I'll come to my perspective view and be creative about it, move my screen this way. So this is my right view image, so I'm going to move it this way, and I'll select my front view reference. I'm going to move it backward. So now I have my 3D studio properly placed, and what I will do next is to start modeling. But first, before I model, I will have to align my photo to be at the center of this blue line here. So I will do Control Alt Q again to my perspective mode, and I will click 1 on my keyboard for my front view, orthographic view, front orthographic view. So 1 on your notepad keyboard, and you'll come to this place that we have object data properties. Click on this and go to opacity and activate opacity. So now I can see through this image. I will say G to move, and X on your keyboard only on the X axis, locking the Y axis. So what I want to do, I want to try to position this scooter to be at the center of this bike. G to grab and X to move. So I want this scooter to be at the center. This is okay. This is at the center now. So now I have my scooter at the center, which is good. I can say Control Alt Q back again to my 4 orthographic view. And I can also, so I'm not going to move this to the center. Also, I'm just going to leave this way. My right view. Things okay like this. So this is what I'll be needing most of the time. So what I want to do now, I'm going to bring a plane into my scene. So to start extrusion, so I'll say Shift A. I'll go to mesh and I'll say plane. And you can see my plane is already lying down flat here. So I can see it facing us. So what I will do now is very simple. I will say arrow to rotate, X on the X axis, and 90 on your keyboard. So I'm rotating on the X axis at an angle of 90, and I will say S to scale this. I'm going to push this guy upwards. I'm going to push him upwards and say S to scale. So what I want to do now, I'm going to on my overlays. I'm going to on my wireframe. So I'll come here where we have overlays and click on that arrow pointing downwards. Go to geometry and activate wireframe. Now I can click outside. Now I can see my edges properly. So I'll go back to my perspective view, which is Control Alt Q on your keyboard for your perspective view. And if I click 1 on my keyboard, it takes me to my front orthographic view. But now I'm just going to split my screen. I just need just two view, which is the front here and the right here. So I can move this guy this way. So hover your mouse to this point where you have this arrow facing like this. So I can right click on it and say vertical split, and a very faint line comes up. I can bring it to this point, to this middle of my screen here, and if I click, now I have two screen. So now anywhere you hover your mouse, that's where you can work on. So I'm going to bring this way. My front view will be this side, and I can change this. So hover your mouse to this place and click 3 on your notepad keyboard. So now I have my right view here. So now we can start modeling. I can also freeze my references so I don't select them by mistake. I will select this. I will come to this point first, and I'm going to click on these filters, and I'm going to select tables. Go to select tables, and now I can now freeze this, deselect this, so I can't select my reference image again, only my object. So I'm going to click on this plane and move this plane forward to this point, starting from this point. So you can decide to start modeling from anywhere, but I would prefer modeling from up here. So this is okay for me, and I'm going to say tab on my keyboard for edit mode. So there are two ways of going to edit mode. The shortcut key is tab, or you can come to this point where we have object mode, click on that arrow downwards and say edit mode. And so in edit mode, we have what we call vertices, we have what we call edges, and what we call faces. First, this is a vectors. A point is a vectors. This is a vectors, and this is a vectors. So if I click 1 on my keyboard, it's for my vector selection. You can also come here to select vectors selection. So this second one here is called our edge selection. So this is an edge, this is an edge, and this is an edge, and this is an edge. So the shortcut key for that is 2 on your keyboard. The third one is what we call face selection. So this is a face, and the shortcut key for that is 3. So as we proceed, we'll be making use of the vertices, edge, and face selection. But first, what we want to do now is to mirror this. So I'm going to say Control arrow to add a loop cut. Control arrow to add a loop cut is just adding edges to your mesh. So if I screw my mouse upwards, I can add several loop cuts to this plane. If I screw my mouse downwards, I can add several loop cuts. So I will just do Ctrl arrow again, so you can see that, and just add one loop cut and left click to activate that. So I will come to my keyboard and click 3 for face selection. So now I have a face here and one face here. I will click on this face and I will say delete on my keyboard, and I will come here to face. So I'm deleting that face out, and I'll come to my modifiers properties here. Here it says modifier properties. I'm going to click on this and go to add modifiers, and I'm going to add what we call a mirror modifier, and click that now. So now I have a mirrored plane here, and I'm going to clip this, go to clipping and caging also. And if I say 1 on my keyboard for vector selection and say G to grab, you can see that whatever thing I do on this side affects this other place. So now it's very simple. If you have done that, you can say A on your keyboard to select all, come to your right view and you rotate this like this to this point, and say G to grab, and grab to this point, and say arrow to rotate. So the rotation varies, depends on how you are rotating your mouse and how you place your hands as well too. Now we can proceed in our modeling. I can say Alt Z for wireframe mode, so I can see through my object while modeling. So I will say 2 for my edge selection. I'm going to select this edge. I'm going to activate my move tool here. I'm going to push this guy to this point. On in my left view, I'm going to bring this guy this way. So I can also still play around here, but I want to keep this very low poly. As we are beginners, I would say 1 for my vector selection. Select these vectors and I'll just push this downwards. I can come to this place also and say Alt Z also, so I can activate my wireframe in this view also. So I can now push these vectors. So I'm just creating my starting point first before I start modeling. And I will say I can bring this guy downwards. I will say 2 for my edge selection, so I can extrude from this place upwards and or extrude from this place backwards. So now what I will do is very simple. I will say E on your keyboard to extrude this face, this edge. E, extrude that. You can push that upwards. Select this edge, push upwards to this point, and you will come back to your right view and make that adjustment. G to grab, and grab this to this point, and I'll say come back to your front view and say E again. Release your mouse by left clicking and push to this point, and you'll come also to this point and drag and bring to this point. So we have something looking like this. Little by little we're going to create this bike sculptor. I will say E again to extrude, right click to release, and push downwards. So I can say Alt Z, so we can see what we are doing. Alt Z, and I'm going to come to my right view again and enable these changes here, so I can make some adjustment as we proceed. 1 for vector selection. I'm going to push this guy this way, looking like this. I think this is okay now. So what I want to do now is very simple. I will hold Alt and select all these edges here. So to select edge in the loop, you hold Alt and select one of these vertices here, or these edges. You select all the vertices in that loop. So I can say 2 for edge selection, and say E to extrude, right click to release. So I'm going to push this guy this way. So it's very simple. Then I'll come to my left view also and bring this to this point. And I'll say 1 for vector selection. Now I can now do some tweaking if the need may arise, and select this and bring this downwards also. So just to have to play around creativity and see how things work. Alt Z, so that I can see my reference. So I'm going to push this guy this way and push this guy this way. So just ensure you follow your reference properly. I have something looking like this, and I have something also looking like this. I can drop this guy to this point and just play around what I'm doing. So I'll see back again 2 for edge selection. Hold Alt, select all this, hold Alt and select all this edge, and I'm going to extrude this again from this point. E to extrude. I will come to my right view also and push these edges backward. So I can rotate arrow to rotate this, and I'm going to push again and bring downwards. I can say 1 for my vector selection to just position these vertices at the right position. So I can bring this guy to this point, bring this guy to this point, and also bring this guy to this point. I don't want to go far that much. I say Alt Z and see what we're having. So I think we're beginning to get something new. And I can say 2 again. Select this face, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to say Alt Z. I can say E to extrude this face. I will right click to release. I'm going to push this way. I'm going to join this face to this face. I'm going to push this guy downwards. Come to my right view also and bring this guy downwards. So I'm going to say Ctrl arrow to add a loop cut here. I'm going to push this downwards also like this. I'm going to say 1 for my vector selection. So what I want to do, I want to consider this face. So I can now say this face and this point. Select these 2 points and say M. And if you say first, this one come to this. But if I say Ctrl Z and say M and I come to last, is that this one meets the other one. Select this and select this and say M and last. So we have enclosed this. We can say Alt Z back so we can see our reference properly and ensure we are doing the right thing. And now push this guy this way. Push this guy downwards also. So we have our scooter looking like this. So Alt Z. Then now we can now start making some few adjustments on this scooter bike. We can say Ctrl arrow just to add 1 loop cut here. You can select all these vertices and push downwards a little bit. So we just tighten up that place. So it's left for us now to start doing some shaping also. You can move this guy to this point and you just have to keep shaping this scooter. So what we're going to do next is very simple. You can say 2 on our keyboard. You can hold Alt, hold Shift to select multiple edges, and we can say E to extrude, right click to release, and we can push this downwards like this. And I can say 1 for my vector selection, and I'm going to now start shaping this guy here following their respective positions. I'll say Ctrl arrow. I'll add just 1 loop cut here just to tighten that up, and I can just push this way and keep shaping this scooter, ensure it's looking pretty okay and perfect. And I'm going to push this guy this way and push this guy this way also, and I'm going to move this to this point. So this place is kind of looking Alt Z. It's kind of okay if I hide this now, so just ensure I'm doing the right thing. I can say Ctrl arrow just to add 1 loop cut here. So this place is looking kind of curved. Hold Alt, select this. You can push this upwards and bring this guy to this point. Since it's okay now, and this is okay, so I can come to my front view and say Alt Z, so I can just see what is happening on what is just going on here, and that is okay for me. So ensure to make some changes, and also to I can have seen some changes I need to make. You can select all this, hold Alt, select all these vertices here, and let's move this guy this way. I think this is quite big here, so I can use my mouse to move, use my mouse to move these vertices points like this. So this is okay. So I have something looking like this also. And hold Alt and push this, select this also and push this. Just trying to follow my reference, ensure that you're doing the right thing. And okay, now, so what I'm doing now, I'm just trying to position some vertices, ensure that they're in the right proportion. It's going to be awesome. Alt Z. So this is what I've done now. You can also say Ctrl arrow to add just one loop cut here. I'm going to push this a little bit backwards. I'm going to say S to scale it a little bit. Alt Z again, and can just enclose this. So just to give us that kind of tight markings, that separation, and I'm going to push this inwards again to this point. So I can now adjust my vertices also. Select this, push this point. So you can select this and push this 3, come back, and Alt Z again. So I'm just trying to follow my reference to keep track of all this, and I'll say Ctrl Z to add an edge here. I think yes. I'm gonna push this guy backwards kind of bit. So I'm gonna select, hold Alt, select this and push this backwards also. So I'm done with this side of the scooter. So I can now hold Alt, select all these, and extrude once again. E to extrude downwards, so I can push downwards like this. I can say arrow to rotate, and I can make the adjustments. My front view also, and select. I can say Ctrl arrow to add just one loop cut here to bring this curve. So I'm dragging that loop downwards a little bit. Then I'll adjust this point to this point, following my reference. So just try to move some vertices and ensure it's simple. And I will also do, I'll hold Alt again, select this, say 2 for edge selection. I can rotate this also to this point. I can say E to extrude that, right click to release and push, and I'll say arrow to rotate, and I can push this upwards. I'll say 1 for vertex selection. So I'll select these vertices and shape them. So one thing you see me do is to select and reshape at every point in time. Ensure you reshape, move some vertices, and just try to make it simple and keep it low poly also. So this guy, I'm going to select these guys here. I'm going to move to this point, and also move this guy to this point, following my reference photo. So select this also, move, select this and move, push downwards, push this guy downwards. Alt Z so I can see what I'm doing properly. Just have something looking like this and like this. It should be here. Let's see. So this is okay now. Um, So I can add one more loop cut here. Control R to add just one loop cut here. And I will come back and move these vertices. Select hold shift to select them. Move this upwards. And hold shift to select this. And make some few adjustments also. Can push these vertices upwards. So when a loop cut is added, there's a need to move some few vertices just to shape things and ensure things are looking smooth. So what next I want to create now, continue the process. I will say 2 for my edge selection, hold Alt, select all these edges and say E to extrude. So I'm pushing this guy to this point and I'm going to push upwards here. So I'll just continue the process. E to extrude. I'll move upwards and say arrow to rotate a little bit. So I'm not considering this front view because we can only see just this side of this scooter. So we are not seeing this down here, but we believe that this down here moves upwards. So do Alt Z back or Z here. Let's put Z back of my wireframe to this point. So I have something looking like this. But what I'm doing, I'm not going to consider this black region. I'm going to concentrate on just this white first. Then we're going to model this part of the scooter also. So I can say E to extrude once again. And say S to scale a little bit. And I'll say 1 for my vector selection. And I think I have to just push these guys backwards a little bit. And I think it's okay now. Just make some few adjustments if you need to. Bring your keyboard back to the right viewport and hold Alt, select all these edges and say 2 for edge selection and E to extrude. You can say S to scale. And I can now say 1 for my vector selection again and move these points. Hold Alt, select all and say E again. And just try to move these vertices 2 for edge selection E and select that edge and say E to extrude. So I'm going to move this guy this way since I'm not making use of the front view so you can see properly. I can say S to scale. I can say 1 for my vertex selection. I say Ctrl R to just add a loop cut here to give us this kind of curve also. And select these 2 vertices and can push them this way. Just give us that curve out here. So I can rotate this now a little bit and say E to extrude again. I can say S to scale just a little bit, push backwards and say E on your keyboard to extrude that region. And just say E again to extrude and S to scale. So we have something just looking like this. And I'm going to select this also and say E to extrude that region. So I'm going to push this way. So I can come here now and see what I'm doing. So I can move this to my perspective and in my reference. So this is what I have in my reference as the back of this bike here. So it comes like this. So I'm going to do that here also. I'm going to say E to extrude upwards. And I'm going to come to my scale tool. I'm going to scale on the Z axis, looking like this, only on the Z axis. So I'm going to come to my move tool also and try to push this upwards, backwards, and see how it's going to look like. I have something looking like this now. So I'm going to push this upwards also and try to make these adjustments. You can also move some vertices. I'm going to say 2 for my edge selection, hold Alt, select this edge and say E to extrude, move to this point. So this is what I'm doing now. I'm going to come to my scale tool. I'm going to scale on the Y axis to align that, to make that flat and straight. So I can also say 7 for my top view. I can say Alt Z, 1 for my vector selection, and just ensure that things are going well. And select these 2 vertices and say move them a little bit downwards. So I now have something looking like this. And I can also say 2 for edge selection. Select this edge here. I can select this also and say F to fill that. So now I've closed this place. I have something now looking like this, which is nice. And what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to add some loop cuts. I can come to I can say 7 again. Select these vectors, just push a bit and see how it's going to look like. And just trying to make this simple and as well having a very nice topology flow. So I'm going to push this guy this way. I'm going to say Ctrl arrow to add the loop cut here. So I'm going to add 1 loop cut here. I'm going to say Ctrl arrow. I'm going to add 1 loop cut here also. This is alright now. And say Ctrl arrow to add 3 loop cuts here. So this is okay now for this region, for the back headlights, the backlight. So I have something now looking like this. So now I can come here and say 1 for my front view, come back over my mouse to this point and say 3 for my right view, and I'll say tab for my edit mode and Alt Z to continue modeling this. So I can say now, but now I have to do some few adjustments also on this bike now. So I think this will be the holder, and I'll select all these also, and let me push this guy. Okay, I can push this guy this way, and so I have to create the light for the back headlamp, and I can also make some few changes also and see how things works here. Just try to push this guy upwards. Select this. Select this also and push upwards. Select this. Just adjust some things also. So later on we're going to create that lamp back there. I'm going to add some few details to that. So I'll select these vertices and I want them to be at the front also with this. So I can easily select them and just move them to this point like this. So I can just select this and just follow my reference and move these vertices. So I can now select this also, move to this point. I can also select this also, hold shift to select, and let's just move this guy. If I say G twice, you can also do some kind of tweaking. Click G twice, you can move on that line also. So I have something looking like this. And now what I'm going to create now is very simple. I'm going to create this side of this sculptor. So I'll say tab back to my object mode, and I'm going to say Alt Z. So this is what we have now for our sculptor, and I can click on this and say shade smooth, and I can come to my modifier properties, click on add modifier, and let's bring in a subdivision modifier. What this does, that this gives our mesh this smoothness, and now we have something very looking very smooth like this. I'm going to go back to my overlays, click on my overlays, and go to geometry and turn off the wireframe. So now we have our sculptor looking like this. We can also add some few details to this. If I come here and say tab, so I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to cage this. So I can say Alt Z, but you can see now it's looking so jumped up. I can say 3, my face selection, I can say Alt Z. So now what I want to do now, I can just add some few details here. Control arrow, just add some few details and push this guy upwards like that to this point. Select this guy and just make some few adjustments. Tab, Control arrow, and just adding some tab again. And select this, hold Alt, and say Control B to bevel that edge. But still, I can also do Control arrow just to add that to that point and say tab. So I have something looking like this. So this just gives us this kind of sharp edges on our bike. I can say tab again. So I think I'll need a sharp edge across this loop here. I can say Control arrow. I'm going to right click on this and push this downwards to this point and say tab, and I have something looking like this. I can say tab again and say G twice, just move it backwards, say tab again. So I have my edges sharped out, and I can also come here too and see if I can add some few details here to this. I can say Control arrow just to push this like this, and let's see how it looks like. I say tab, but it's not looking nice. And I'll say Control Z back. So I just need just this loop alone. So now we've come to the end of this part 1 of our sculptor model. Thanks for watching. Please kindly like, follow, and make some comments on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and be ready for part 2. In part 2, we're going to be modeling several things like this wheel here, the wheel, the tires, and the handles also, and some other parts of the sculptor. So thanks for watching. I hope you've learned something new. Thanks again.